Popular false preachers are being exposed in 2024. False prophets, false churches, great deception. In 2024, the conversation around false preachers, prophets, and deceptive churches has become increasingly prominent, especially in light of growing concerns over religious manipulation and misinformation. Many believe that some religious leaders, often referred to as false prophets or false preachers are exploiting people's faith for personal gain, distorting religious teachings, or misleading their followers. This perception has led to a surge in exposure and criticism of these figures, aligning with biblical warnings of great deception. Here are some key trends and dynamics driving this discourse. 1. Financial exploitation and prosperity gospel. One of the most common accusations against certain televangelists and megachurch pastors is the promotion of the prosperity gospel, which teaches that God rewards faith with material wealth. Preachers who advocate this message have often amassed significant wealth, owning luxury homes, private jets, and other expensive assets. Many critics argue that this message distorts the true teachings of Christianity, focusing more on personal wealth and less on spiritual growth or service to others. Exposure of wealth. In 2024, investigative journalism, online communities, and social media have played a significant role in exposing the lavish lifestyles of these preachers, revealing the stark contrast between their wealth and the often struggling financial conditions of their congregations. 2. Doctrinal manipulation and deception. Another area of concern is doctrinal manipulation, where certain preachers are accused of distorting scripture to fit their personal or political agendas. These figures often use their platform to promote ideas or teachings that deviate from traditional biblical interpretations. In some cases, these preachers have been exposed for predicting false prophecies, such as claiming that certain political events were divinely ordained or falsely predicting the end times. Failed prophecies. In recent years, and continuing into 2024, many self-proclaimed prophets have faced scrutiny for making bold predictions that have not come true. This has led some followers to question their legitimacy, as the Bible warns against prophets whose predictions do not come to pass. Deuteronomy chapter 18 verse 22. 3. Abuse of power and moral failings. Scandals involving moral failings, such as infidelity, sexual misconduct, and abuse of power, have plagued many churches led by charismatic figures. These scandals have deeply impacted the credibility of some high-profile religious leaders, leading to public fallout and the disillusionment of followers. Exposures through media. In 2024, media outlets and whistleblowers within churches have been instrumental in uncovering these scandals. With the rise of social media, former members of churches have shared their experiences, bringing to light abusive practices that were previously hidden or ignored. 4. Online ministries and deceptive teachings. The rise of online ministries and religious influences has also led to a proliferation of teachings that many consider deceptive. While the internet has provided a platform for genuine spiritual growth, it has also allowed false preachers to reach larger audiences with little accountability. In some cases, these online figures promote sensationalized or apocalyptic messages to attract followers, creating fear-based communities. The great deception. Some believers see this trend as part of a larger spiritual phenomenon referred to as the Great Deception, where false teachers will lead many away from the true faith, as prophesied in the New Testament, Matthew chapter 24 verse 24. This deception, according to some interpretations, will intensify as the world approaches the end times. 5. Calls for accountability and reform. Many Christians and theologians are calling for greater accountability within religious organizations. They argue that churches must be transparent about their finances, leadership structure, and teachings to protect believers from exploitation. Some denominations have begun to take action by investigating and disciplining leaders who are found guilty of misconduct or heresy. Grassroots movements. These calls for reform are often driven by grassroots movements of laypeople who demand a return to authentic, biblical Christianity. Many of these movements advocate for house churches or smaller congregations, where leaders are more accountable to their members. Biblical context. Warnings about false prophets. The Bible contains numerous warnings about false prophets and deceptive teachings, particularly in the New Testament. Jesus himself warned in Matthew chapter 7 verse 15 to "Beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing but inwardly are ravenous wolves." The Apostle Paul also frequently warned the early church about false teachers who would distort the gospel for personal gain. 2 Timothy chapter 4 verses 3 to 4. Many believers see the current exposure of false preachers and churches as a fulfillment of these warnings, indicating that the world is approaching a time of increased spiritual deception, a precursor to the end times as described in the book of Revelation. Conclusion. A time of reflection and discernment. As false preachers and deceptive churches continue to be exposed in 2024, the religious landscape is being shaken. For many, this is a time of deep reflection on their faith and a call to practice discernment. While the exposure of these figures is painful for many followers, it is also seen by some as a necessary process to purify the church and return to authentic worship and teaching. As this trend unfolds, it will likely continue to spark debates about the role of wealth, power, and truth within modern Christianity.